Winston Churchill is remembered as a wartime titan, the orator who steered Britain through its darkest hours. Yet behind the resolute leader was a man driven by creativity, curiosity, and a relentless imagination. While the world saw his speeches and military strategy, few knew the private passions that shaped his soul: painting, writing, and dreaming. Churchill began painting in his 40s. Discovering a refuge from the pressures of politics, the canvas became a sanctuary where he could explore color, form, and emotion. Far from the scrutiny of Parliament and the public, he described painting as a therapeutic escape, a way to quiet the incessant clamor of responsibility and self-doubt. His style was impressionistic, focused on landscapes and seascapes. He loved capturing light, reflections, and atmosphere, often painting in the mornings or late evenings when solitude allowed him to concentrate. His works exuded a personal touch, revealing his sensitivity and a profound appreciation for the natural world. The Prime Minister's art was more than hobby. It was a lifeline. During political crises or military planning, he would retreat to his easel, using brushstrokes to process anxiety, stress, and the weight of leadership. His paintings were deeply personal, a visual diary of moods and moments in time, often left private, yet full of meaning. Churchill's artistic talent was recognized by his contemporaries, though cautiously. Close friends and family admired the quality of his work, noting the vibrant colors and bold brushwork. For him, the act of painting was not about fame or approval, but about self-expression and internal balance amidst a life of turmoil. Parallel to painting, Churchill nurtured his lifelong passion for writing. He authored history books, memoirs, and articles, balancing political obligations with literary ambition. Writing allowed him to reflect on events, distill lessons, and communicate ideas beyond the immediate confines of policy and speeches. His books combined rigorous research with narrative flair, revealing the mind of a historian as much as a leader. Churchill's dual life as artist and writer also influenced his oratory. His command of imagery and metaphor in speeches often reflected the literary sensibility he honed on paper and canvas. The vivid metaphors, the careful cadence, and the ability to evoke emotion were all shaped by his creative pursuits, merging artistry with political necessity. Even in his most public moments, glimpses of the dreamer emerged. Observers noted that he often carried notebooks, sketches, or ideas scribbled on the margins of documents. These small insights hinted at a man whose imagination was constantly at work, one who sought beauty, reflection, and meaning even amid war. Churchill's writing career spanned decades and genres. He produced biographies, historical narratives, and war accounts, many of which won critical acclaim. His style was direct, descriptive, and infused with dramatic narrative, revealing his belief that history was not merely a record, but a story to be told with clarity, emotion, and insight. As a historian, he approached subjects with diligence. His multi-volume works on the Great War and World War II combined meticulous research with narrative skill. He often spent hours in archives, reviewing reports, letters, and accounts to craft a cohesive story. Writing gave him a sense of control and permanence, a way to order the chaos of events he had witnessed firsthand. Churchill's books also served as a personal tool for reflection. Writing allowed him to analyze decisions, successes, and failures with a measure of detachment. Through words, he processed complex emotions: pride, grief, frustration, and hope, translating them into narratives that were both intimate and instructive. Fiction was another outlet. Churchill occasionally experimented with storytelling, blending imagination with reality. Even when writing historical accounts, his narrative techniques revealed the mind of a storyteller, not just a chronicler. He understood pacing, character, and the rhythm of events, skills he later deployed in the theater of politics and war. Writing also intersected with his political career. Articles and essays allowed him to reach a broader public, advocate policies, and influence opinion. He understood the power of narrative in shaping perceptions, and his literary skill became a tool of persuasion as vital as his speeches or strategic planning. The act of writing required discipline and solitude. Churchill often wrote late into the night or early in the morning, carving space from the demands of leadership. These moments of quiet focus reflected his inner world, a man who balanced relentless external responsibility with the inner life of observation, reflection, and creativity. His literary achievements earned him recognition beyond the political sphere. Churchill became the only British Prime Minister awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, acknowledging not only his mastery of prose but his ability to illuminate history and human experience through words. The prize underscored the duality of his life: soldier, statesman, artist, and writer. Yet even with acclaim, writing remained personal. Manuscripts, drafts, and private reflections revealed a man seeking meaning and understanding. Through pen and paper, Churchill explored the human condition, leaving a legacy that transcended politics, demonstrating the depth of intellect and imagination behind the public persona. Beyond painting and writing, Churchill was a dreamer. He imagined not only the future of nations, but also the world of ideas, inventions, and possibilities. His imagination shaped policy and strategy, enabling him to envision outcomes that others could not. He saw beyond the immediate, anticipating the political and military terrain with visionary insight. As a child, he had been fascinated by history, exploration, and storytelling. This early curiosity never waned. It matured into a capacity for creative problem-solving. Churchill's imagination allowed him to conceive audacious strategies during wartime. From the evacuation at Dunkirk to the planning of D-Day, dreams and reality were intertwined in his decision-making. Churchill's dreamer's mind was also visible in personal hobbies. He collected models, studied military campaigns, and enjoyed sketching technological ideas. Even minor inventions or conceptual plans reveal a man constantly testing the boundaries of his imagination, blending practicality with creativity. This imaginative streak also fueled his optimism. Even in the darkest hours of the Blitz, Churchill maintained a sense of possibility, envisioning eventual victory when the odds appeared insurmountable. His ability to dream beyond immediate despair inspired confidence in both allies and citizens, demonstrating the power of creative vision in leadership. Dreaming extended into his personal life. He imagined his own legacy, the narratives he wanted history to remember. His diaries, letters, and reflections reveal an acute awareness of posterity, showing that he constantly considered how his actions would be interpreted and remembered. Churchill's dreams were not limited to war and politics. He envisioned cultural enrichment, social progress, and technological advancement. He believed that leadership required imagination, a capacity to foresee and shape events, and an appreciation for the arts and human ingenuity that made society richer and more resilient. His artistic and literary pursuits were themselves expressions of dreaming. Painting allowed him to visualize the world differently, seeing light, color, and emotion beyond mere fact. Writing allowed him to shape narrative, imagine consequences, and explore alternative paths of history. Ultimately, Churchill's dreaming was inseparable from his leadership. The same imagination that fueled his art and writing informed his political and military decisions. The public saw the leader, the strategist, the statesman. Privately, he was a creator and visionary, constantly weaving ideas, images, and possibilities into a coherent, imaginative life. Churchill's painting became more than a hobby. It was an obsession that sustained him through crisis. He developed a routine, often waking at dawn or retreating late at night to paint. The act of brush on canvas allowed him to detach from immediate pressures, to find balance amidst the storm of public duty and wartime responsibility. He painted landscapes from memory or imagination, sometimes inspired by trips abroad. Scenes of the French Riviera, the English countryside, or the Mediterranean coast appeared in vivid colors, revealing a keen eye for light and atmosphere. His works were both studies of nature and reflections of his internal mood. Painting taught Churchill patience and observation. Every stroke required deliberation. Every composition demanded consideration. These lessons translated into leadership. He became adept at assessing situations, predicting outcomes, and adjusting strategy with precision. Art, in a sense, was training for governance and war. His technique was impressionistic, emphasizing light, texture, and emotion over strict realism. Observers noted his bold color choices and dynamic compositions. The paintings often reflected a personal perspective, capturing the emotional resonance of a scene rather than its exact appearance, revealing his interpretive, imaginative mind. Churchill's private exhibitions, often in his home, were small affairs attended by friends, family, and a few While he never sought fame as a painter, he welcomed recognition from those whose opinions he valued. Painting became both personal therapy and a source of modest pride. Art also helped him endure stress. During wartime, moments spent at the easel provided respite from planning invasions or attending cabinet meetings. Painting allowed him to regulate emotion, reflect, and recharge mentally, sustaining both creativity and resilience. Over decades of high-pressure work, the discipline of painting complemented his writing. In both, he exercised structure, imagination, and personal expression. Together they formed twin outlets, allowing him to process experience and articulate understanding in multiple forms, visual and textual, reinforcing the depth of his intellect. Ultimately, painting revealed Churchill's inner life. Public memory fixates on speeches and battles, but the canvases testify to a quieter, introspective dimension, a man who observed, imagined, and created, bringing color and nuance to a world dominated by strategy and survival. Writing for Churchill was inseparable from leadership. His books and speeches shaped public opinion, chronicled history, and cemented his role as both participant and observer. He used prose to articulate strategy, capture morale, and inspire nations, blending literary skill with political necessity. His historical accounts demonstrated rigorous research, keen analysis, and narrative flair. He transformed military campaigns into readable, compelling stories, offering lessons in courage, foresight, and decision. Writing was both cathartic and influential, allowing him to shape not only memory but understanding. Churchill's literary style emphasized clarity, rhythm, and metaphor. He recognized that words could move hearts, unify people, and motivate action. This mastery of language was evident in speeches that rallied Britain during its darkest hours, where literary artistry and political urgency intersected seamlessly. Personal writing also provided an outlet for emotion and reflection. Diaries and letters reveal intimate thoughts, doubts, and dreams. Through writing, Churchill explored identity, legacy, and human experience, processing events that were too complex or heavy for casual conversation. The interplay between writing and imagination fueled his problem-solving. Creative thinking sharpened through narrative construction helped him anticipate outcomes, weigh probabilities, and envision strategies in politics and war. The pen became both a tool of reflection and a weapon of persuasion. Even as Prime Minister, he balanced political duties with literary production. This remarkable duality demonstrated that intellectual engagement and creative expression were not distractions, but integral to sustaining mental acuity, clarity of thought, and resilience under pressure. Churchill's literary achievements were globally recognized, culminating in the Nobel Prize in Literature. This honor reflected not only his scholarly diligence but also the eloquence, insight, and artistry with which he chronicled human experience and historical events. Ultimately, Churchill's writing and painting were extensions of his inner life. Behind the public persona of the war leader existed a man who dreamed, observed, and expressed, a multidimensional figure whose creativity enriched leadership and left a legacy of intellect, vision, and artistry. Churchill's life was a constant balancing act between immense responsibility and personal expression. Even during the pressures of World War II, he carved out time to paint and write. These pursuits were not indulgences. They were essential tools for maintaining clarity, focus, and emotional equilibrium in the face of unrelenting stress. His daily routine reflected this duality. Mornings often began with strategic meetings, briefings, and correspondence. Yet he would later retreat to his study or the quiet of Chartwell to pick up a brush or pen. These moments of solitude allowed him to process complex decisions, vent frustrations, and tap into his creativity. Painting provided more than a mental escape. It was a lens through which he interpreted the world. Landscapes, seascapes, and gardens reflected his fascination with nature, light, and atmospheric mood. Each composition offered a structured yet flexible outlet for imagination, training the mind in observation, patience, and nuance. Writing similarly required discipline. Churchill produced volumes of essays, histories, and memoirs, meticulously researching and refining each sentence. His prose revealed an analytical mind capable of shaping large, complex narratives while capturing the human emotions underlying historical events. These creative outlets reinforced his leadership. The ability to see patterns, imagine outcomes, and communicate with clarity translated directly into strategic foresight and political influence. Creativity became a hidden arm of power, strengthening judgment in ways that speeches and military plans alone could not. Churchill's dedication to art and writing also set an example to those around him. He modeled the importance of intellectual engagement, demonstrating that even in high-stakes leadership, maintaining personal passions and reflection was vital for resilience and long-term effectiveness. The intersection of duty and creativity was not without tension. Critics occasionally questioned whether these pursuits were distractions, yet Churchill defended them as necessary for mental health and inspiration. His art and literature were inseparable from the intellect that guided a nation through peril. Ultimately, the balance he struck between war and personal expression illustrates a deeper truth about leadership. The most effective figures cultivate both discipline and imagination, grounding decision-making in observation, reflection, and a rich internal life. Churchill's beloved home, Chartwell, served as both retreat and laboratory for his creativity. Nestled in the Kent countryside, the estate offered solitude, expansive views, and gardens that inspired his painting. Here, he could escape the weight of politics and immerse himself in brushstrokes and ideas. The house was filled with books, paintings, and artifacts, reflecting a mind both historical and imaginative. Rooms doubled as studios and libraries, spaces where thought and creativity intertwined. Churchill often worked surrounded by objects that stimulated memory, reflection, and invention. He experimented with landscapes, capturing light and weather, translating fleeting impressions into permanent forms. Painting was an intimate conversation with nature, a way to explore perception, mood, and emotion, and to refine an understanding of color, depth, and perspective. Gardens offered another dimension of expression. Churchill designed flowerbeds, terraces, and pathways with both aesthetic and playful intent. Tending plants and observing seasonal changes provided a rhythm, a reminder of continuity and patience. Amidst the chaos of national crises, visitors often witnessed his artistic side. Dignitaries, friends, and family saw him wield brushes with intensity, sometimes pausing political conversations to demonstrate a technique or explain a scene. These moments humanized the wartime leader, revealing the private mind behind the public figure. Chartwell was also a place for writing. Diaries, memoirs, and drafts of speeches were composed in its quiet corners. The serene environment allowed him to reflect deeply, process experiences, and synthesize history, imagination, and personal observation into coherent narrative form. Even during wartime, Chartwell was more than a home. It was a psychological lifeline. Painting, gardening, and writing there were strategies for maintaining composure, sustaining morale, and nurturing a sense of identity beyond the demands of office and conflict. Ultimately, Chartwell exemplified the unity of Churchill's inner and outer life. It was both refuge and laboratory, allowing him to cultivate creativity, process emotion, and sharpen intellect, demonstrating that personal sanctuary is crucial to enduring the pressures of leadership. Churchill's creativity extended beyond art and writing. It influenced his strategic thinking, his ability to imagine multiple scenarios, anticipate enemy moves, and conceive unconventional plans, stemmed from the same imaginative faculties that guided his paintings and prose. Strategic audacity was a hallmark of his leadership. From orchestrating the evacuation at Dunkirk to planning the DI invasion, Churchill's creative mindset allowed him to explore alternatives that others overlooked. He applied imagination to logistics, timing, and deception, seeing possibilities that conventional reasoning often missed. Even rhetoric benefited from this creativity. Churchill's speeches are renowned not only for their content but for their rhythm, imagery, and emotional resonance. Metaphor, cadence, and narrative structure drew directly from his literary sensibility, transforming words into instruments of national morale. His dual engagement with art and history reinforced this approach. Painting taught him to observe detail, interpret patterns, and perceive relationships. Writing honed the ability to construct narrative and weigh cause and effect. Together, these skills informed political judgment and military foresight. Churchill also valued psychological insight. He understood human behavior, public perception, and the importance of belief in shaping outcomes. Creativity enabled him to craft messages, strategies, and policies that aligned with both material realities and human expectations. Creativity as strategy extended to risk-taking. Churchill was willing to pursue bold initiatives that required imagination, planning, and timing, understanding that innovation often involved uncertainty. Yet his creative mindset allowed him to anticipate pitfalls and prepare contingencies, blending daring with calculation. Even routine political challenges benefited from imaginative thinking. Negotiations, policy formulation, and coalition building all required vision, flexibility, and problem-solving skills sharpened through artistic and literary practice. Ultimately, Churchill's creative faculties were inseparable from his leadership. Art, writing, and imagination were not hobbies. They were instruments that enhanced strategic thinking, communication, and resilience, revealing the depth and complexity behind the public figure of wartime Britain. Churchill's extensive diaries and personal letters offer rare insight into the mind of the man behind the public image. Through these writings, one glimpses the internal conflicts, dreams, doubts, and triumphs that shaped his decisions and personality. Letters to family and friends reveal a deeply reflective individual. He shared thoughts on history, politics, and personal life, using correspondence as a space to analyze events and express emotions privately. These writings demonstrate the intellectual rigor and sensitivity that defined his character. Diaries functioned as both record and meditation. Churchill meticulously documented daily events, military decisions, and political negotiations, providing a narrative that was both personal and historical. Writing was a tool for understanding, processing, and shaping memory. In these personal texts, his creative mind is evident. Descriptive passages evoke vivid imagery, metaphor, and emotional nuance, reflecting a literary sensibility cultivated over decades. The interplay of observation and interpretation mirrors the techniques he applied in painting and storytelling. Churchill's reflections revealed he recognized his strengths and weaknesses, his moods, and his ambitions. Writing offered a form of self-regulation, a way to confront anxiety, plan action, and maintain clarity amidst tumultuous circumstances. The diaries also underscore his fascination with legacy. Churchill consciously shaped narratives of history, ensuring that events, decisions, and achievements would be understood accurately in future analysis. Writing allowed him to guide interpretation even before events were fully resolved. Through letters and diaries, Churchill explored both the external world and his inner life. He balanced duties of state with personal contemplation, demonstrating that reflection is a critical component of effective leadership. Ultimately, these writings reveal the private Churchill, a man deeply engaged with ideas, aesthetics, and human experience. They complement the public image, showing that intellect, creativity, and self-reflection were as integral to his greatness as courage and resolve. Churchill's imagination extended into humor and storytelling. He possessed a sharp wit, often using humor to navigate political tensions, diffuse stress, and connect with colleagues. His quips and anecdotes reveal a playful, perceptive side often hidden behind the stern public image. This humor reflected his intellectual agility, quick thinking, linguistic dexterity, and creative wordplay allowed him to craft memorable remarks and memorable speeches. Humor became a tool, enhancing persuasion and morale while humanizing his leadership. Imaginative storytelling was also part of his social repertoire. Churchill entertained guests with anecdotes from history, politics, or personal experience, blending fact and embellishment for dramatic effect. These stories strengthened relationships and conveyed lessons indirectly, reflecting a strategic use of narrative. His sense of play extended to artistic expression. Some sketches and paintings contained whimsical elements, demonstrating joy and curiosity. Creativity was never solely serious. It was a source of delight and personal renewal, a reminder that imagination could lighten even the heaviest burdens. Churchill also appreciated literary humor, satire, and poetry, often quoting or composing verses spontaneously. These abilities enhanced his cultural literacy and provided tools for diplomacy, rhetoric, and engagement with the broader intellectual community. Even during wartime, humor offered psychological relief. He understood the importance of maintaining morale, not only for the public but for himself and colleagues. Laughter and wit provided perspective, easing tension without undermining gravity. Imagination and humor together reveal a multidimensional personality. They were both coping mechanisms and instruments of influence, demonstrating how creativity can serve practical and emotional functions simultaneously. Ultimately, this playful, imaginative side complements the image of the resolute leader. Churchill's ability to blend artistry, intellect, and wit shows that leadership is not only about command and strategy but also about vision, imagination, and humanity. Churchill's historical vision was extraordinary. Even as a participant in world-changing events, he approached them with the eye of a historian, meticulously recording details, analyzing outcomes, and reflecting on causes. Writing and reflection became tools for understanding both strategy and human nature. He recognized patterns in politics, war, and diplomacy, connecting events across time to draw lessons. This perspective shaped his leadership, allowing him to anticipate enemy actions, prepare contingencies, and make informed decisions under immense pressure. Churchill's multi-volume histories demonstrate his analytical rigor, from the Boer War to the Great War, and finally to World War II. His work combined primary research, personal experience, and narrative skill. He merged the roles of chronicler and participant, providing insight that few others could offer. Historical writing also fed his imagination. Crafting narratives required understanding causality, character, and consequence, skills that informed both his political judgment and creative pursuits. Painting and writing nurtured a mind capable of navigating complex, uncertain situations with clarity. Churchill's historian's eye extended to his political speeches. He contextualized events, framed challenges, and invoked lessons from history to inspire confidence. By grounding rhetoric in historical insight, he lent authority to his words, demonstrating that creativity and scholarship could reinforce leadership. He also understood the human dimension of history. Beyond dates and battles, he explored motivations, fears, and ambitions, revealing the complexity of choice and consequence. This approach highlighted the interplay between individual agency and larger historical forces. Writing history allowed Churchill to shape collective memory. He consciously recorded events to influence how future generations would perceive decisions, struggles, and leadership, blending personal reflection with scholarly insight. Ultimately, the historian within Churchill enriched every aspect of his life. Creativity, reflection, and intellectual rigor converged, producing a leader whose understanding of the past informed strategy, inspired people, and left a lasting literary legacy. Despite his public persona, Churchill often thrived in solitude. Time alone at Chartwell or while traveling provided space for reflection, writing, and painting. Solitude allowed him to organize thoughts, explore imagination, and process the weight of responsibility without distraction. He embraced moments of quiet to develop ideas and strategies. Walks in the countryside, evenings at the easel, or hours spent at his desk offered mental clarity. These periods of introspection were essential for creativity, decision-making, and emotional resilience. Even in crisis, he valued private reflection. During intense periods of war planning, he would withdraw briefly to think deeply, review notes, and refine approaches. These intervals of contemplation allowed him to balance the demands of leadership with inner equilibrium. Solitude also fostered innovation. Free from external pressures, Churchill explored unconventional strategies, artistic techniques, and literary experiments. The mind in quiet reflection could make connections and generate solutions that were less accessible amidst noise and distraction. His diaries and sketches from these periods reveal a layered personality, observant, introspective, and imaginative. Churchill captured details of life, nature, and thought, revealing an individual who engaged deeply with both the external world and his inner self. Even when surrounded by advisors and staff, he maintained mental independence. He filtered information, weighed counsel, and synthesized insights before acting, demonstrating that solitude and reflection were integral to effective leadership. Solitude was also a refuge from stress. Painting, writing, and reading in private offered emotional balance, helping him sustain energy, creativity, and resilience during relentless demands of office and wartime. Ultimately, the solitary thinker within Churchill complemented the public statesman. His private creativity, reflection, and observation informed every aspect of leadership, demonstrating that vision and resilience often grow in quiet, disciplined spaces. Churchill's creative and intellectual life shaped those around him. Colleagues, family, and staff were influenced by his example of disciplined curiosity, artistic exploration, and rigorous writing. He demonstrated that leadership required nurturing the mind as well as commanding strategy. He mentored young politicians and aides, encouraging independent thought and creative problem-solving. Through conversation, storytelling, and shared exploration of history, he inspired others to think critically, imagine possibilities, and act boldly. His example extended to cultural appreciation. He introduced peers to literature, art, and music, highlighting their importance for perspective and emotional insight. By modeling intellectual engagement, he enriched the environment of decision-making and leadership. Churchill's humor and imagination also inspired loyalty. Staff appreciated a leader who could combine strategic brilliance with wit and narrative flair, creating a culture where creativity, courage, and insight were valued alongside discipline and obedience. He encouraged writing and reflection in others, demonstrating that personal expression strengthened both character and intellect. By valuing creativity alongside tactical skill, he cultivated minds capable of innovation and resilience. Mentorship was often indirect. By living a life of intellectual breadths, he modeled the integration of imagination, discipline, and curiosity, encouraging others to pursue excellence beyond conventional boundaries. He also inspired through action, demonstrating courage in war, commitment to principles, and engagement with creativity and history. Churchill offered a template for leadership that combined intellect, artistry, and vision. Ultimately, Churchill's role as mentor and inspirer shows that leadership extends beyond command. By fostering imagination, reflection, and creativity in others, he shaped a culture of intelligence and vision that complemented his strategic genius. Churchill's creative faculties were inseparable from his leadership vision. Imagination, historical insight, and artistic sensibility informed his strategic foresight. He anticipated global shifts, evaluated complex scenarios, and conceived bold initiatives that shaped the course of history. That his vision encompassed both immediate action and long-term perspective. He balanced short-term military needs with enduring geopolitical consequences, demonstrating a capacity to synthesize detail and context. Urgency and foresight, imagination fueled diplomacy. Churchill's ability to convey vivid scenarios, anticipate reactions, and craft persuasive narratives strengthened alliances and inspired confidence among leaders and populations alike. Art, writing, and reflection enriched judgment. By observing, recording, and creating, he exercised analytical and interpretive skills that translated into flexible, informed decisions. Creativity became an engine for strategic clarity. Vision was also moral. Churchill understood leadership as a responsibility to guide and protect, balancing courage with compassion, intellect with humanity. His creativity allowed him to envision ethical, effective, and enduring solutions. The visionary aspect of his leadership fostered innovation. He was willing to embrace unorthodox strategies, novel approaches, and calculated risks, applying lessons from imagination and reflection to real-world challenges. Even as war demanded pragmatism, his creative mind remained active. He envisioned post-war reconstruction, cultural enrichment, and societal progress, demonstrating that leadership transcends crisis to shape the future. Ultimately, Churchill's vision combined intellect, imagination, and moral insight. His ability to see beyond the immediate, informed by art, writing, and reflection, established him not only as a wartime leader but as a timeless figure of strategic foresight and human creativity. Churchill's legacy is not only that of a wartime leader, but also of a creative and intellectual giant. His art, writing, and imagination offer a window into a private life that informed public achievements, showing the multidimensional man behind the historical icon. His paintings remain celebrated, revealing sensitivity, observation, and emotional depth. They reflect a mind capable of perceiving beauty and nuance, qualities that enriched judgment and resilience in leadership. His literary output continues to influence historians, politicians, and writers. Through meticulous research, compelling narrative, and reflective insight, Churchill shaped understanding of history, strategy, and human nature. The fusion of creativity and intellect enhanced his leadership. Artistic observation, imaginative foresight, and literary clarity strengthened decision-making, communication, and problems, demonstrating that personal cultivation is inseparable from public effectiveness. Churchill's life illustrates that resilience, vision, and courage are complemented by creativity, reflection, and engagement with ideas. His story challenges the notion that leaders must be solely practical or stoic, highlighting the value of imagination in shaping history. He remains an inspiration not only for statesmanship but for the integration of art, literature, and thought into life. His personal pursuits provided balance, insight, and perspective, enriching both character and leadership through writing, painting, and dreaming. Churchill left a legacy that transcends time. He reminds us that intellect, creativity, and reflection are powerful forces that shape both personal life and the broader world. Ultimately, the Churchill you never knew is a story of a man who led nations while nurturing a rich inner life. His artistry, literary genius, and imagination defined him as much as his courage and resolve, offering lessons in leadership, creativity, and humanity that endure across generations.